Trails West by Emily, Anna, Kaitlin, Ausin, and Lukas. Many people traveled west on the trails. The Trails West began in the 1800s. The Mormon Trail started in Nauvoo, Illinois, and ended in Salt Lake City, Utah. The California Trail started in Independence, Missouri, and ended in Sacramento, California. The Oregon Trail started in Independence, Missouri, and ended in Oregon City, Oregon. The groups that traveled west were the Mormons, missionaries, and women. The missionaries were the first American settlers to travel through the South Pass to Oregon. The women shared in on everything. They were just as involved in the work and dangers of traveling west. Most of the women were mothers and wives. Women had to do what they did back home. They washed clothes, cooked, and took care of children. They had to do all this while traveling 15 to 20 miles a day. The Mormons were led by Brigham Young as they headed west on the Mormon Trail. He decided to move his community to Utah. The journey to Utah took a lot of planning. Young was very careful about every detail. The people he led stopped on the way to plant crops and build shelters. This journey west was very difficult. When Young and his followers arrived at Salt Lake City, they laid down their first settlement of Salt Lake City. The Mormons were the first American settlers to settle in the Great Basin. Some hardships settlers had to go through was having to cross mountains, deserts, and lots of open space. People that made the journey west had to suffer through disease, starvation, bad weather conditions, and death. Between the years of 1840 and 1869, roughly 350,000 people traveled west on the trails in covered wagons. Because the trails were so crowded, pioneers were forced to leave most of their everyday comforts behind. The Donner Party was a great dark side of traveling west. On April 16, 1846, 9 wagons left Springfield, Illinois on the journey to California. The leader of this group was James Fraser Reed. He wanted to make a fortune in California. He had recently read a book about crossing trails, and in it claimed to have a shortcut on how to get across the Great Basin. It estimated it would take about 4 months to cross plains, deserts, mountain ranges, and rivers on the way to California. The whole group traveling consisted of roughly 72 men, women, and children. In the group was the family of George and Jacob Donner. Through the trip, animals like oxen started dying off. To spare animals, anyone that was able to would walk. As the journey went on, they ran very low on food supplies. Further into the trip, the group consisted of 22 settlers. Later in the journey, they built 3 shelters from any supplies they could spare to protect them from the freezing weather. There ended up being 20 feet of snow. They were stuck for the rest of winter. They were completely out of food supplies. Through the whole trip, 31 people had died while traveling west with the Donner Party. The relationship between the Trails West and Manifest Destiny is that without the trails leading to the west, the nation wouldn't have really expanded. Heading west was very important for America. Without all these trails leading pioneers to the west, the U.S. wouldn't have really expanded as well as it did. People traveled the trails for many reasons: wealth, a new beginning, and just to change their lives. The manifest destiny of the United States was to go from sea to shining sea. These trails gave us that. Thousands of settlers crossed these trails, and thousands gave up the comforts of their normal lives to start over and just to see what was in the West. The Trails West were very important in U.S. history. Without these trails, we might not have discovered new places, and we wouldn't have the great country we have today.